Hey guys, it's Minty/Jason here. I won't beat around the bush with this one. I've read into the bearded expense controversy quite a bit now, and there's a few things I'd like to talk about. Both about the circumstances surrounding Bearded's actions, as well as the, at least to me, the alarming amount of passivity from people's responses. I'll go through each section detailed in the Google Slides, link in description, and then talk a bit about people's responses and why I feel we need to be more proactive. Withholding payment. So we're already getting into a case of withholding finances from people who have been doing work for him. As we see here, he's had no issues providing payment for other services. So what this means is that this Wolf of the Gale person who edited most of Bearded's videos and his last channel trailer being promised payment for the work. So that's a pretty big deal, right? Editing someone's videos, that's quite a bit of work. And one of these slides details, I think it was something like it was meant to be $50 a month this person was meant to be promised. Regardless of that, we see here as well that Bearded has been pretty blatant about being able to afford leisurely things like personal items, posters, albums. He gets 150 to 200 a month from his Patreon at this time, that looks about to be March of 2019 onwards. And that's not right. That's not good. When you have someone who, for all rights and purposes, is working for you, because working as someone's editor, even though it's not full-time, commission work is still work. You got to respect your freelancers. And yeah, I was told I was going to be paid $50 per month in regard to the sales. Got the shot here. Bearded had no issue with saying he was going to pay or buying other stuff, and yet he made easy profit and yet didn't pay Wolf what he was promised. Now this is already a big problem because it's a slippery slope that leads into so many other things. It shows a shocking lack of respect to the person doing such work for him, and it also displays a lack of care, a lack of credibility in Bearded, and that really kind of starts to fester into the other issues that we're going to get into. So already it's not a great start, and I think the main thing to take from this is that something as simple as withholding payment, that's an important indication of just how poorly he can treat a person. And that is a real focal point. Okay, now this is one that hits pretty personally for me, so I apologise if I come off more emotionally charged this time around, but a one-night stand, so messing with people's feelings. Right. So apparently in July of last year, Bearded had attempted to goad somebody into a one-night stand while in a relationship of his own, as these tweets from March and October are conveying. That is a pretty odd gap, to be fair. But other than that, so like the slide says, it shouldn't be explained why trying to goad someone into a one-night stand by abusing their friendship and even lashing out against them when that's refused that's horrible. That is, you are taking someone who cares about you, trying to goad something out of them that is just so superficial, and abusing that, and you're lashing out of them when you don't get what you want. No. And to top it all off, he's doing that while in a relationship already. Again, that's that strong lack of respect for others. He's showing a strong lack of loyalty, and a very poor very poor sense of character. It's very shocking. And we come to this very recurring theme with Bearded where when refused sexual favours, he would play the depression card. This is quite common in emotionally abusive and manipulative people. They will play the depression card, the suicidal card. They will use all of these cards that basically depict a very dangerous negative situation for them to give themselves leverage, put burden and pressure on their friends to basically stop whatever the fuck they're doing. Because hey, in their eyes, if we do anything to make him feel worse, we could be putting the gun to his head. And you've got to understand that's how emotional abuse and manipulation can work. Being in the situation he was, Bearded basically could have these people tied around his finger. And given it took so long for it to come out, I wouldn't be surprised if for a while that was ultimately the case. So take from this, once again, very shocking, poor character, very poor loyalty to his friends and this soda person who he tried to goad into a sexual one-night stand. No, it's not excusable. It's really not excusable. Okay, now we're getting into perhaps the most important section of that kind of underlines all of this. There's for a start, the most slides is on this content, but it's also because manipulation, what it is, what it means, and how it affects each other section we're going through and have gone through. It underlines every last bit of Bearded's character and Bearded's actions, and it's basically the magnum. Oh, no, that's not the right word. It's the modus operandum, whichever. You get the point. It's how he does what he does. So right here, we see he claims mental abuse from his friends, uses depression as leverage, quotes, and there is no excuse for the way I acted with my mental illness. Again, he's saying there's no excuse for the way he acts, but then he's pinning it on his mental illness rather than admitting that it was his own poor actions. From Soda, he got sad that I even asked if we could slow down, and I'd been going along with that mushy stuff and acting happy to make him happy. Again, appeasement, because if she didn't, he played the depression card. He got mad. He lashed out. Beard made a habit of asking people how they felt about his friends, and when they replied honestly would become depressive. So that shows an inability to take the truth from people, to take something blunt. When Sento was denied, Bearded had seemed depressed and suicidal for days. Again, it's that recurring pattern of depression, suicide, and again, just abuse of those mental cards. When Bearded asked Wolf of the Gale to edit his previous channel, he provided 0 guidelines, left him to edit. When he provided the trailer, he brought up that he wanted a very specific clip and then threw in a large list of clips that he wanted. Started ranting about how he felt terrible and he was a terrible friend, which of course Wolf of the Gale denies. Now you see that right there is pretty bog standard emotional manipulation. Seriously, like, I'm such a fucking prick. I hate it. Here I am, leeching off of you. It's like such this slimy little way to say, oh, I can't believe I'm leeching off of you. How horrible am I? Please feel sorry for me, is the underlying message there that's really behind it. It's very shrewd, it's very manipulative, and the key thing here is that it is smart. People need to realise that this isn't just some stupid little kid. He knows full well what he's doing, because you don't accidentally manipulate people. You don't accidentally emotionally and mentally manipulate and abuse people to this extent. There's just being a bit of an airhead, and then there is being calculated and knowing exactly what you're doing and how you're acting. Again, we've got more examples here. Resorted to brute forcing money out of his friends. Jesus Christ. trying to pull money from Wolf of the Gale, the person he's meant to be paying, mind you. After a while of personal friend group drama, Bearded had attempted to pin the blame on other figures, Sandsmith and Xenogene. Now, I need to stress how important that is, because Sandsmith in particular has been known as one of Bearded's closest friends. And unless I am recalling completely wrong, Sandsmith is basically the reason why Bearded Expense had the chance to be an identity in the first place. He owes a lot to this guy, and to see him dragging even these guys through the mud is... There is a blatant lie in plain sight. Nobody had disrespectfully parted ways with him. The worst that came of it were people saying that they simply did not want to associate with him anymore. Now you see, again, that right there, if true, and honestly I'm inclined to believe that it is, yeah. And again, look at these tweets. Bearded is phrasing it in such a way that he's been betrayed, that he's been stabbed in the back. And it's, again, it's all of this play for pity, for sympathy. Bearded made this post on Twitter that led some to believe that Sandsmith and Gene were aggressors. Yeah, there you go. It's trying to frame himself as the victim and these guys as the big bad guys who are beating on this poor little guy. You can still be friends with them all. A friend that forces you to pick a side is no friend at all. I don't really feel like I have any friends, but I'm not going to take your time with my bullshit. Oy vey. Bearded pushed himself out of the group, pushed buttons when he was told to do otherwise, and when he faced backlash went into a depressive episode. Again, that key theme. Depressive episode. Bearded attended a D&D session, but ended up using the session as a means to get in contact with this person again. Evidently someone who tried to step away from him, who wanted to keep distance. This is an important thing. This is borderline stalking of somebody who wants to keep out of his way, but Bearded doesn't want to let it go. Whether it's because he still believes he has something to gain from this person, I don't know. Here we go again, a whole slide, often using suicide as a method to get what he wants. Even if he didn't know he caused harm on all sides, then doing a U-turn. He puts people into their own depressive states, and at times their own suicidal tendencies, and uses that as leverage. This is, I cannot stress how dangerous this is. Often uses the promise of money as a means of keeping friends. I mean, we're basically just getting the TF2 Fousey tube right now. He tends to favour certain people over artists he's supposed to be paying. In tandem with the depressive and suicidal cards, he uses money. He, right here, I just want to help you, man. Can I pay you for some work? Some shaz, la-da-da-da. It's very buttering up to keep people in his good graces. And here we go again. Suicidal tendencies to get leverage and financial gain. This tweet here, apparently, which was deleted. I almost blew my face off, but I'm better. I remember that. I remember there was like this... Jesus. I remember that. That was a very crazy period. And people were very concerned. While he did in the end apologise, he made money off of it. And before we go on to the next section, I do actually want to talk a little bit about that as well, because there is a pretty important thing that I think really plays into the fact that this guy has quite the ego. I'm not going to go ahead and call him a narcissist because I'm not qualified to say so, but the tendencies are certainly there. So on his Steam profile, you'll notice that he says, Buck, don't play with me, but you can pay to. There is a patron tier to actually play with this guy once a month. Now, if it was just a $1 or even at most a $5 reward to go along with stuff like, the usual Patreon rewards like getting Discord access, like seeing works in progress, that would be fine. It'd be a bit paying at all, but okay. But no, to get the privilege to play with this guy once a month, you got to pay $25. $25 to pounds. So put that into perspective for me, 20 quid to play with this guy once a month. I know that's on top of the rest of the rewards, but that's just so like, oh, you gotta give me something for the privilege of playing with me. And hell, it's a limited tier as well, so first come, first serve. I mean, this is like those celebrities and those politicians who are like, you've got to pay this exorbitant amount of money to get the privilege of sitting down and having some jammy dodgers and a cup of tea with me. Oh, what's that? You want to sit down and have some bangers and mash with Nigel Farage? You got to cough up a few $100,000, mate. You get the point, though. It really doesn't speak well for this guy's motivations. There's quite clearly quite an ego there, and it really seeps into his treatment of his friends, and I really don't like that people kind of just sweep it under the rug as him being this young guy who's just been through some abuse in his life. Remember, I did a help bearded expense video out a long time ago. I'm not regretting that. The guy needed help. I wanted to help. But it's like, going through a shit life does not excuse this kind of treatment of people. So people, you gotta understand, you need to hold him accountable. You can't just give him a pat on the back and say, now it's time to change. You've got to give him a boot up the ass and say, start changing. Okay, now we're getting into lies. And perhaps the most dangerous of all of his lies is about his age, but we'll get into that. So we start with lying about having an NSFW chat in a Discord with minors. Now, I'm not 100% sure on how Discord works with like state laws and such. To put it for reference, going ahead, Bearded Expense lives in Oklahoma. But it is very sketchy having an NSFW chat that could be so easily accessible to minors. Something that made this Gene person who wanted to disassociate, as we saw before, very uncomfortable. He made the ultimatum, delete the channel or he wouldn't come back. Bearded agreed and hid this. How he can call us brothers when he lied to our faces and mentally abused us. Yeah. So he made it unviewable, but to only this Gene person, but not anybody else, as this is saying. I mean, that is... Again, that's gaslighting. That is literally putting him in a false perception. That is, again, clear mental abuse. And now we go here. This is the big one. Because when we start talking about sexual favours and nudes and explicit art, this underlies it all very dangerously. He only turned 16. Now, the age of consent in Oklahoma is 16, but the laws surrounding child pornography in Oklahoma are surrounding the age of 18, as you can see here, which we'll get into in a second. So while he never showed that, he benefited heavily from lying about it, be it nudes from full-grown adults or getting into adult servers and conversations that he should not have been a part of. Now, I need to stress that there is both a danger to Bearded and other people on this end, because when you are underneath that age, I'm not sure if you have to be under the age of consent, but considering the Oklahoma law here states 18, distribution is a felony. It's a very serious felony. And the thing is, when you're underage and you send an explicit picture of yourself, and it says of someone under 18 years, so that's the key thing here, if he was 16. So I don't know if Bearded has done so, but the thing is, Xenogene's tweet on this mentioned sending child porn, so I'm going off of that. I'm stating this more as speculation, not more concrete conversation like I'm talking about from the slides. But here's the thing. Whether or not... the thing is, he is sending a picture of him... He would be sending, hypothetically, a picture of himself nude. And because he is underage, in that picture, he's distributing child pornography, which would make him a sex offender by Oklahoma law. Even though he is also a minor, it's the fact that he is distributing child porn of a minor, whether or not it's himself. Now, receiving nudes from full-grown adults, that's an even bigger danger for these people, because whether or not you are underage, you'll see this on To Catch a Predator all the time. The intent and the action of distributing child pornography to someone, or not just child pornography, but explicit pornography whatsoever, to someone who you believe to be under this age, whether it's the age of consent or the age listed in this law, is a felon. It doesn't matter if Bearded actually was 18 or over or not. The fact that he was lying about his age, the thing is, he is putting these people at risk. Because these people think he's 18, they think it's safe, and then it comes out that, yeah, actually he is 16, he's putting these people in danger of being convicted, of being charged for this. Like, it probably won't happen because it's just such a sketchy and vague scenario. But you understand the danger. Lying about your age and then receiving explicit content from people based on the consequence and the circumstance can really be a danger to them. As we move on, Bearded's father was never a mob boss and never a con man. He was an asshole and a meth head. I remember this shit back when I made the Help Bearded Expense video. There was this big story about, you know, being a mob boss and shit. He told us complete flat out lies, lying to the public. Bearded hated Vegas. In the way he dresses and carries himself like a self-proclaimed Vegas-born mafioso, why would he try and make himself so similar to someone he says he despised? I mean, yeah, that makes complete and total sense. The point is that he is gaslighting people. He is creating complete false perceptions about himself, his actions, and his feelings to keep people on his side and to get his own way. And the manipulation underlines all of this in such a dangerous way that people really need to understand is something that can't just be easily forgiven or brushed off as this guy being a young kid. Now, the synopsis here. He's never been held accountable for what he's done to his friends, whether he's trying to solicit sexual favours, one-night stands, mental abuse, abusing mental card, depressive card, suicidal card, keeping finances from people, using their help of him through tip of the hat, RTX or whatever, as leverage to get what he wants, using depressive episodes to avoid criticism, presenting half-truths as fact, lying about his life. He might still be a kid, but he is making adult decisions. He's still an abuser. That is very poignant, and yes, that is very important to say. Because you cannot excuse all of this with the fact that he's just a kid. Because that plays into exactly what he does and what he wants. He's trying to play himself off as this vulnerable guy who is fucked up in the head. And while he might be, that doesn't excuse it. Manipulation is very cold, very calculated. He knows what he's doing every minute of the way. And that can't be excused. And what I think really underlines all of this for me, when it comes to how people are handling this, there is an alarming amount of passivity or even outright, I wouldn't say forgiveness, but like this tweet here from Blade TF2. Isn't this a little picky and harsh, especially for a 16-year-old? Picky and harsh? He's soliciting from people. He's lying. He's manipulating. He is withholding payment from people who are doing work for him. Even Xenogene here, law and textbook, referencing what his actions are against the law. As I've got here, Oklahoma state law, which applies to bearded expense. There is a nice little list here. The consent of the minor is not a defense. It is a defense if the child pornography is in the course of law enforcement activities. Again, slide 21 confirms that his dad was the kind of person that could abuse him, so I assume that Bearded was dealing with mental issues. This is not an excuse. You cannot use mental health as a shield to excuse your bad actions. You cannot use it as a crutch to say, oh, well, I know I fucked up, but it's my head, it's not me. I meant well in the end, guys. Doesn't work like that. You cannot just skirt all of this under the rug. And to call it picky and harsh is a massive insult to the people he's hurt, because they are bringing a massive amount of information on his actions to the table, that they have been hurt by this, and that shows just a nasty lack. And like this person, Altakal, said, his age isn't an excuse for what he did. At 16 you should be able to know what is right or wrong. Hell, I learned this lesson at 14. That's kind of subjective, because you get adults who are still pretty fucked in the head, even if they don't have mental problems. The brain develops differently for people as they grow older. The parts of the brain that help distinguish like right and wrong and clear what we consider mature decisions. Someone who's 14, the average 14-year-old, the average 16-year-old, hell, likely doesn't actually have that capacity, which is why age of consent is at that point for a reason. Hell, at most points being at 18 or higher, because it is deemed that these people generally cannot consent because they don't understand the ramifications of it. Now Blade here is saying he should own up to his actions, I just don't want him to receive harsher punishment. Now, on that, I'm very mixed, because this public expose, bringing his actions to light, yeah, that is punishment. That is holding him to account. But I don't think that's really cutting it. The distancing that he's likely going to get, or the outright separating altogether from many of these people, is also punishment. Bearded having to live with his actions and realise that the veil with which he concealed himself is now lifted. It's very akin to the old Toon Critic scenario, where for a long time this Bearded went like basically unaccountable, and then once the veil was lifted, he had to sit there and basically watch the world crumble around him. And given all of this, I really cannot say that it's punishment enough to just say, you know, he's faced accountability from this being public, let's help him change. He needs a boot up the ass, and he needs people to stop being so, like, passive about it. I mean, we've got so many people being like, I didn't know any of this, understandable. I love Bearded's content, I genuinely hope he improves his behaviour. It's understandable, people are going to be hurt by this, they really are. But what I'm urging everyone is to not fall back into that trap all over again, when he most likely inevitably starts putting on more waterworks, trying to say, I'm sorry, I will change. Unless he shows tangible proof that he's actually going to make a difference, his word doesn't mean shit. The intent doesn't mean anything until he has the actions to back them up. That's what I'm urging everybody to keep to mind here. That he doesn't deserve sympathy, he needs discipline. And that's going to be a job for everyone who wants to keep by him. For the people who are distancing and separating from him full stop, it's not your job anymore. You've tried with this guy and to no avail. If they choose to not associate with Bearded anymore, that they want to cut a toxic person out of their life, you cannot judge them for that. You cannot say they're wrong for not giving him another chance, because they have already done so, and they've decided that they are better off not trying. If you do want to give him another chance, that's on you. But if you remain passive, if you remain pandering, if you remain, you know, just giving him a pat on the back rather than a boot up the ass, you're contributing to him relapsing into that state of comfort, of abuse of people, because by not keeping him held to account, keeping him raked over the fires, you're just going to let him fall back into that state. So, closing words from me. Discipline, not sympathy. You can feel sorry for him. Sure, he's mental, in that he's got mental health problems, he's been through a fucked up life, but remember that a lot of people have had fucked up lives and they don't go on to do this to people. Yes, people who've been through mental shit can often be more likely to reflect that onto the people around them, sometimes unwillingly, but it's not an excuse, it's an explanation. It's not justification, it's a reason at best. So, for those who really wish to see Bearded make a difference, all I'm saying is keep vigilant and don't be suckered in by more suicide and depression. If you don't see action and tangible change, you're wasting your time. That's all from me. I hope my view on things and my little analysis of this was insightful, helpful. If you can take anything from it, don't sit on the fence, basically. Be honest about what you want from this and what your intentions and views are. This has been Minty, and I will see you next time. Stay strong, TF2 community. Stay strong.